Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that the world revolves around them and that they're the most important person in the world. And in this episode, guys, it's all about people sharing their Karen encounters while working in restaurants. And this one Karen, boy, oh boy, I won't spoil it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's crazy stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Okay, so I've been a server for various points throughout my life since I was 16 years old, and I'm 29 now. Usually I would just serve or host as a part-time job, but currently my only job is being a server. And of course, I've dealt with really entitled people being in the restaurant industry, but this one entitled idiot takes the cake. One day, I had 3 guys come in that looked about my age. When they sat down, I greet them and asked how many shots they were buying tonight. They were fairly loud, and they seemed to be in a good mood, and I said that mostly to be funny. The first couple of guys told me that they didn't want shots, that they would be ordering beers. And that's when the last guy told me that he would need a few shots if I was going to be his server. At that, I chuckled. I thought we were joking and went to get their drinks. So they ordered their food, a few more beers, and there weren't any major issues. And then they said it would all be one check tonight. So I go to pick up their credit card receipts, and there was 0 in the tip line. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe they'll leave cash, no big deal. But as I'm thanking them for coming in, one of the guys interrupts me and he pulls me to the side and says that I probably noticed he didn't tip me. Hearing him say that, I'm honestly kind of embarrassed to be having this conversation, and I was flustered. So I just replied with, "Oh, that's okay, have a good night." He then proceeded to tell me, "Listen, I didn't really feel like shelling out an extra 20 bucks for you because, no offense, you could really step it up a bit. Like, all the other waitresses in here are very cute and they earn their tips, and tonight we got you. Try putting on some more makeup or going to a gym. And listen, I'm just being honest with you. And here's a tip. If you make it so that a guy would want to bang you, he'd tip you better." Hearing him say that, I was so mortified that I didn't even say anything. I could feel my face turning beet red, while every guy at the table just stared at me and nobody said anything. I work very hard, and I take so much pride in my work. I try to look nice and put together every night. I'm friendly, outgoing, and because I love working with people, I love my job. Now, I wish I could have said something back to him, but I just walked away instead. I've worked double shifts all week and closed each night, and I've been stiffed a couple of times almost every day this week. But I don't take it personal. I still always hold my head up, but that really hurt. I hate entitled people. Guys, I feel so bad for OP. Like, if you're not gonna tip, just don't freaking tip. You don't need to pull someone to the side and try to give pointers on how to get a tip from you while making them feel like absolute crap. Like, let me get this straight. The guy only tips women he finds attractive and that he would want to sleep with. So how does this guy decide on how he tips male servers? Like, just nothing across the board? Or do you guys think that maybe this guy's so freaking cheap that he just makes excuses to avoid tipping? Like, all I can say is some people really suck. So many moons ago, I waitressed at a restaurant near several churches. This was way before COVID. My first table one day was fresh from church. They were about to pray when I walked up, and seeing this, I stepped back to let them finish. The wife, who I'll call Karen, then waves me towards the table. I held up a hand indicating no thanks. Now, this did happen often, and most of the time, they just went about their business. But this Karen said, "Oh, we're just gonna pray. Join us." Now, I suppose this is where I should say that I don't do the religion thing. Now, I don't mind if they do it around me, but I'm not comfortable joining in, and I wouldn't even know what to do or say, to be honest. At that, I say, "No thanks, I'll come back when you're done." And I go to turn around to leave, and Karen says, "It's okay, we won't tell your boss." She then laughs, and I say, "Boss, no, I'm actually very busy, I gotta go refill some drinks." And then Karen interrupts me and says, "There is nothing more important than God, so come here and pray with us." I tell her, "No thank you, I'll be right back, I'm just gonna go." The Karen then interrupts me again and says, "I'm asking you to pray with my family. Are you really rejecting this offer?" At this point, I'm thinking, what? So I say, "Thank you, but I have to politely decline again. I'm very busy." And at this point, Karen's husband steps in, and he says, "Excuse me? What did you say?" I tell him I'm not comfortable doing that, so I'm declining your offer. Now, this isn't to say that you can't do it yourselves. Please, take your time, I'll go refill the drinks and I'll be right back. No rush. And that's when the idiot loudly says, "I want the manager. I don't want you waiting on us either." I tell him okay and walked away quickly. I found the manager and explained the situation, and the manager goes to the table and tells them that it's not required for servers to pray with customers, and he wouldn't force me to do it. And if they wanted another server, they could have one. At that, Karen responds, "You're just as bad as she is. All of you working here instead of going to church like you should be. It's a shame. It's disgusting. You are disgusting people." The manager then says to her, "What would you rather have? The rest of us sitting beside you in a pew, or here, serving you iced tea and chicken fried steak? We can only do one." At that, the husband sputters and says, "Well, it's not up to me." My manager then tells him that a new server will be with them momentarily. And Karen says, "What about her?" The manager walks away from the table without reply, and they get up and huff out, telling us that they'll never come back. But next Sunday, guess who's right back there again, and in my section? Karen sees me and says, "We asked for you specifically today because we're gonna pray for you while you work." I ignore that comment and take their drink order. I can then hear them praying loudly, something about helping me find my way to Christ. The meal goes fine, no issues, but when they leave, I see they've left me a big fat 0 in terms of tip. Instead, they've left me literature on their church. Next weekend, they come back requesting me again. I talk to the server next to me and swap tables because I wouldn't serve them again. They stopped me when I was walking by and questioned why I wasn't waiting on them when they had asked for me specifically. I tell them, "I figured after all the problems last time I waited on you, you'd for sure want another server." And Karen says, "Problems?" The whole table looked confused, and I tell her, "Yeah, I figured since you didn't tip me that I did something wrong. I wouldn't want to do that to you again." I then turned and walked away. The husband was saying something to me, and I totally ignored him, and that was the last time I saw them. I think I offended them enough that they refused to come back. Thank their God. Guys, I absolutely love how OP thanks their God. And guys, I can't believe that Karen and her family had the nerve to show up week after week asking for OP as their server, telling her that they'll pray for her while she works. I find that a little disturbing. Like guys, I'm all for religion, like believe what you want, whatever makes you happy, right? Just don't push it on others. And especially don't drag people into your prayers who don't want to and make them super uncomfortable like how OP was. And guys, as always, when I read stories like this that involve personal beliefs, I just want to ask that you guys keep it friendly in the comments, like please no hating or bashing on anybody's beliefs, because I want to keep this a super friendly community. So I work in an upscale-ish restaurant. We have 2 floors, and last night I was serving upstairs. And because of the obvious restrictions and whatnot, we only have hosts downstairs. When we're on a wait, the host will see when there's open tables upstairs, page the guests, and then send them up. A server then greets them, sees where the host had pre-planned for them in the system, and then we seat them. So now that you know how that works, I'll also add in here that I'm one of the top servers in my restaurant, consistently selling the most each week, and I'm a trainer, so my managers all love and appreciate me, and they mostly have my back. Okay, so the Karen family. They're paged that their table's ready. They walk upstairs and stand by the host stand while I finish my table and make my way over to them. I then say, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And they just stare at me. Finally, the wife goes, "Do we just seat ourselves or what?" I, holding a paper cocktail menu and silverware, and feeling like I made it clear that I was about to seat them, said, "Nope, that's my job. You guys can follow me this way." They follow me to the table and take their seats. I then slide the silverware I was holding down to everyone individually, instead of just setting the 6 silverware on the end of the table for them to hand out to themselves. I then say to them that our menu is all virtual right now, that there's a link on the table, and I'll be right back. I then come back and ask if they have any questions or they'd like to get some drinks started. Again, there was silence. I just pick someone and say, "Okay, can I grab something for you to drink, sir?" We don't have what he wants, but I suggest something similar and he says okay. The wife asked what beer we have, and I say, "We have a lot. What do you like to drink?" And she said, "I don't know. That's why I'm asking you what beer you have." I say to her, "We have 27 beers on draft and 19 that are bottles, so if you tell me what you're usually into, I can kind of guide you through what I think will work for you." At that she says, "Holy crap, I'll just have a damn Bud Light since you can't sell a stupid beer." I laughed and say, "Okay," just looking stunned. Her husband then turns his attention to me and says, "Are you having a bad night?" To which I say, "No sir, are you?" And then he said, "No. We're just trying to have a nice family night, and you are rude. You've been rude the whole time, and then you threw our silverware at us." Hearing him say that, I'm stunned, so I just say, I definitely did not throw it at you guys. I was trying to slide it down to the table for all of you. Sorry if it came off that way. I'm not having a bad night, and I haven't had an attitude. That's when the wife jumps in and says, well, it started up front, when you said, that's my job. And now, you've been rude to us the whole experience. Now, I want to note that we're like 5 minutes in from them walking up the stairs at this point, and she yells so loudly that all my other coworkers hear, your aura is effing ugly, and we don't want you. We don't appreciate that. Send us a new server. At that point, it took everything I had, I mean everything, not to say anything rude back to her. I just said, I'm happy to grab you a new server. I'll just grab my manager for you too while I'm at it. My manager comes over, knowing everything from my side already, and they tell him that I was rude by seating them, and then making that comment about how they couldn't seat themselves. The woman then says that I threw their silverware at them, and that my attitude and my aura are just plain ugly. My manager stuck up for me and said that I'm one of their best, but they still insisted on another server. Now imagine being one of the 3 other servers, having already heard and seen this go down, and now it's your table. The server made a $6 tip on an $80 bill, by the way. Guys, I am so surprised that that family didn't try to have their meals comped at that point. And guys, I can't take that Karen seriously. Like, she tried to hurt OP twice by saying that OP has a bad aura. Like, what does that even mean? Alright, so being a picky eater is fine. But at a minimum, you have to work within the confines of what's actually available. Enter one stubborn, entitled a-hole who took the menu items not as a suggestion, but as a point of negotiation. So the guy basically says, I'm looking at the pastas, do you have any rotini? I tell him, no, just spaghetti, rigatoni, fettuccine, penne, and bow tie pasta. That page has all the available pasta dishes we serve. The guy says, well, you should carry rotini, but I'll start off with a fettuccine base, and I'd like to add some bolognese, mushrooms, basil, bell peppers. I then interrupt and say, I'm sorry to cut you off, sir, but we don't offer build your own pastas. We offer what's listed on the menu, and I can make a couple of modifications. He then says, well, that's ridiculous. If you have the items, you should be able to make it, right? So make it. I tell him it's restaurant policy, sir. It helps the kitchen flow. He then stares angrily at me and says, well, then I'm gonna need a minute. I then talk to the kitchen manager to give him a heads up, and he doubles down on not allowing the grand modifications. I return after a few, and the guy's body language tells me that he's already prepared an opening statement for the courtroom. The guy says to me, okay, so I'm gonna start off with a chicken Alfredo, but instead of the cream sauce, I want bolognese, no tomatoes, extra mushrooms, add basil, bell peppers, no Parmigiano, and instead of chicken, I want the fresh cod. I tell him, sir, I can only do a couple of substitutions, and our fresh cod is a separate dish entirely. The guy says to me, look, just talk to your kitchen. It's what I want, so make it. Now, I do want to note that this guy seemed like he was trying to really impress his friends, who all looked pretty mortified. So I find the kitchen manager again, and he shakes his head and goes, alright, well, ring in both a pasta bolognese and a fresh fish of the day. It's gonna be a $42 pasta. Bravo, buddy. So the table gets their food, and this guy flashes me the most idiotic smirk, like he's just got one over on us. The guy says to me, see, that wasn't so hard. And by the way, it's delicious. You should think about adding it to your menu. And I'm thinking, this self-satisfied piece of work. So they finally get the bill, and the dude's face is priceless. Well, there definitely was a price to his expression, about $42. And he says, did you really charge me for 2 entrees? I tell him, yep, I told you the cod was a separate dish. The guy didn't have much room to argue there. Thankfully, his friend paid and left a fat tip, probably out of vicarious embarrassment. Yeah, so people like them think they're so smart, guys, and I'm glad he had to pay for it in the end. Well, his friend paid, but you guys get the point. Like, the guy basically thought he found some sort of loophole. That's like me asking for a garden salad, but saying, oh, instead of the greens, I'll substitute for a lobster. And the tomatoes, yeah, I'll swap that out for a soup. Oh, how I wish, guys. Every so often, we get a celebrity in my restaurant. I've never been here when it's happened. We're not too far away from our city's main concert venue, but the owner still has a strict no comping meals for anyone based on star power. That's a policy we're all apprised of when we're hired. His logic being that it'll start as one exception and then turn into all sorts of D-listers sniffing around looking for an ego boost. Ironically, this has never been a problem because one of the 2 times we've had real celebrities in, they've never expected a free meal. They've paid and tipped well. It's only the D-listers who act all shocked when the check comes, but we almost never get them either, so it's not a big deal, until last week. So we're located right by my college, and a girl who attends my college was recently on the Dr. Phil show. Now, the thing is, she wasn't even a featured guest, and she didn't appear in person. She was just teleconferenced in for like 3 total minutes to weigh in on the featured guest relationship. But because she was on TV, this Karen thought that she was the hottest thing to have ever happened on campus. I'd heard a few people joking around how she was going around telling everyone that she was a celebrity, and she kept expecting people to recognize her. It sounded really cringy and terrible. But I didn't know her. I hadn't even seen the show, so what did I care? It was fun gossip for like 10 seconds, and I quickly forgot about it. However, the girl's self-absorption wasn't completely baseless. There was a lot more students on campus than usual this summer because so many took gap semesters to avoid Zoom school during COVID. Not much is happening around here as we ease back into normal life, so people did get unreasonably excited about someone from our school being on national TV. So she was sort of treated like a celebrity. She was getting a lot of special attention. She even got some free things on campus, and she had people ask to take a photo with her. So that's when she decided to start testing the waters off campus. And I guess she met with some success because most of the nearby businesses are staffed with students. She soon appeared in our restaurant. Now this girl was a nightmare from the moment she stepped in the door. I didn't recognize her at first, but it all clicked as she was demanding a 4-person table despite being a party of 1. We were okay with it, only because we weren't especially busy that day. She didn't make eye contact with her server. The first thing I heard her say after the server said hi and introduced himself was, "Menu, water, new fork." Like she was writing out a list. Her server was only just bumped up from trainee status and he's barely 16 years old, so it especially sucked that she was dumped on him. The guy was incredibly shy and sweet, and if I anticipated the crap storm this woman blew in with her, I would have swapped with him. But this all happened pretty quickly, and I'll usually do anything to avoid serving classmates that I don't like. It's rare I don't like a classmate I haven't met, but there's a first time for everything. Of course, nothing on the menu was acceptable to her as is. She had to get a ton of substitutions and even additions. Even her side salad of mixed greens had to be, and I'm not kidding, unmixed. She wanted each lettuce, but separately on a plate. Her server explained that the greens came pre-mixed, but she just stared blankly past him and went, "So? Separate it," as though it was the most obvious thing ever. Now, the kitchen actually accommodated all her requests because it was a really slow day and there were easy enough solutions to each thing, but she still sent at least one of her plates back. In the 20 minutes or so it took for her food to come out, she asked us how much longer it would take 4 times because she had places to be, like she was so important. She then demanded that we change the music that we had on to a playlist of hers instead, and even made comments about the lighting, and by the time she was finished eating, we were seconds away from throwing her out. The server asked if everything was alright and if she needed anything else. She said no, so he said he'd be right back with a check. Now I could tell from her face, even as far away as I was, that she wasn't expecting a check. She was expecting us to serve her food for free that day. She looked all sour and twisted, and I was dying internally, but it was so satisfying. Then she just stood up and calmly walked right out the door. I wasn't sure what I was seeing at first. I thought maybe she'd gone to get her wallet from her car or something. But this isn't the kind of place where a lot of people drive. And I just knew it in my gut that I had to follow her because her server definitely wouldn't. So I went out the door and yep, she was traipsing down the street, tapping away on her phone like nothing was wrong in the world. I called out to her and she half turned around and then realizing that I was from the restaurant, tried to pretend that she hadn't heard me and went right back to walking, quickening her pace a little. And at that moment, I would have laughed if I wasn't so pissed. So I jogged to catch up with her and I was trying to keep the situation nice and calm to allow her to save as much face as possible. I was like, "Oh, hi, sorry, there's still the matter of the bill you haven't paid, but you left." Now I knew damn well she didn't forget, but figuring confronting her would just feed into unnecessary drama. She then looks at me in total disbelief, and she says that she was gonna Instagram her meal with us and give us a shout out, and typically that's enough when she goes out. She said that without a hint of sarcasm or embarrassment. Now I'll admit, the next part was a little mean, but I couldn't resist. I went, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And she effing lost it. She insisted that I knew exactly who she was and that I was just jealous of her, and then, wait for it, that was the reason that I was forcing her to pay for the food that she ordered at the restaurant. I just told her, "Look, if you don't plan to pay, we'll have to involve the police." At that, she just laughed and said, "Well, if you don't know who I am, you won't be able to find me, right? So go ahead, call the police." Honestly, she had me there, but I didn't need to admit to her that I really knew who she was, because for all she knew, we had security cameras or would just describe her really well. So I let her walk off and I went back to the restaurant and I called the police, just like she said. It was absurdly easy to track her down because I knew who she was and she was posting geotagged posts online all day, including a super angry post about how she'd eaten at our restaurant, and it was terrible. She basically incriminated herself and led the police right to her. Now I doubt the cops would have followed up so diligently if it were only us, but apparently she'd walked out on a couple of other places that genuinely didn't recognize her and expected her to pay up. And then she posted angrily about how the business sucked, further incriminating herself. They didn't know who she was, but they described her well enough, and that paired with the post was enough for police to drag her in. Our trainer server actually had to go down somewhere and identify her. He was terrified when he was first asked, but when he came back, he was totally giddy and thought the whole experience was pretty cool. At least, cooler than working his shift. Oh my goodness, guys, some people really need to get off their high horse. Like, that girl appeared on TV for 3 minutes, and she seems to think that she's the most important human being on Earth, and that everyone should cater to her, and that she should eat for free wherever she wants. Like, what the heck is going on? I hope her getting arrested knocked her down a few pegs and that she learned a lesson. And guys, that brings us to another end of our /EntitledPeople. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. A super entitled Karen decides to attack OP in front of her family and actually spanks her. It's such a funny story, so guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.